Hey everyone, and welcome. We are so glad that you are here to join us today for the webinar on how business analysts provide value in today's work environment. I'm Kathy Vaské. I work with Max Technical Training, and I'm going to be your moderator today. Today is our third session of our series of 4 webinars for business analysts and project managers. The last webinar we will have on this series is next week on the 29th. And it's really for anyone who has had to lead a project, whether you have the title project manager or not. This webinar is entitled Managing a Project with Your Team. Tomorrow you will receive an email from us with links to a recording of this webinar as well as the speaker's slide deck, so I want to make sure that you're aware of that. Also, I just want everyone to know that Max is an annual sponsor for IIBA Cincinnati and PMI Southwest Ohio. We're very pleased to sponsor those organizations. I have a 30-second commercial for you. I have to give it, so please be patient. Today's Lunch and Learn is brought to you by Max Technical Training. We are a premier provider of software and professional skills education for IT and business professionals. We deliver training in the top technologies and methodologies and have done so for over 17 years. Clients prefer Max because our trainers are highly qualified experts in their subject areas. They help clients solve real problems as part of the typical classroom experience. And instruction at Max is not one size fits all. We develop and we deliver, modify, and customize curriculum, and we can deliver that curriculum privately on the client site or here at our campus. We also provide follow-up mentoring, coaching, and consulting for those clients who need that extra boost to transform training into action. Commercial's over, thank you. So just a little bit before we jump into the presentation, we have a few housekeeping tips for those of you who have not been on our webinar. Lou is going to present for about 45 minutes, and he is open to taking questions throughout the presentation. So you just please type your questions into the question section that's found in your GoToWebinar deck, and then I can voice those questions for you to Lou. If there are some that he cannot get to during his presentation, just go ahead and type those in anyway. He will answer them at the end. If you do have any comments or issues with the GoToWebinar and you'd like to share comments with us or ask for help, use the chat section. We do have technical lead Brandon on with us, and he can help you with any of those issues. And again, remember that we are recording today's session, and we will email a link to that recording and the slide deck to you tomorrow. So now I would like to introduce you to Lou Bergner. He's got his PMP and he's an MBA. He's a senior consultant and a senior trainer. Lou brings over 25 years of project management and business analysis consulting and training expertise in multiple industries, from banking to manufacturing, and in both profit and nonprofit sectors. He has extensive background, including working with organizations around the world to provide best practices expertise. As a project management professional, Lou has an MBA and blends that manager's perspective with his PM skills. He combines these strengths with his understanding of technology to support clients and improve processes. Welcome, Lou. We're so glad to have you here with us today.
Thank you, Kathy. Good to be back with you. Well, today what we want to do is we want to talk a little bit about how business analysts add value to our organizations, right? I mean, for a long time people have been doing this. I was talking to somebody the other day. They said, I think I've been doing this for a long time, but I was never called a business analyst, right? So anytime there's a problem to be solved, anytime we have to gather requirements for anything, that's business analysis work. So what we want to talk about today is how the business analyst can develop and enhance their analytical skills so that they can provide the best possible benefit to their organization, whether it's for profit or not for profit, regardless of what kind of business it is. It doesn't have to be an IT business, by the way. There's business analysis outside of the IT world, for sure. Now, let's think about what business analysis is. It's the discipline of identifying the business needs and determining solutions to the business problems. So as we think about business analysis, really what's going on here is, as I mentioned, anytime there's a problem to be solved, anytime there's a change, there's business analysis being done, okay? Whether it's gathering the requirements for a particular IT system or Well, the example that I like to use, I just recently moved into a brand new home, and we saw it when it had just been drywalled. Right? Now, there was business analysis being done. Right? The builder had to understand from me, the builder, the contractor, was playing the role of a business analyst. He had to ask me, what kind of appliances do I want? Do I want, what kind of countertops do we want? What do we want in terms of cabinetry and things like that? All business analysis, even though there was no IT going on, right? So, and understand that there are a number of different kinds of requirements, right? There's a high-level requirement, a business requirement that says, I need, and this is one that you get from senior management, where it says, I'm looking for a home for my wife and I in a safe neighborhood that's comfortable, and it's got sufficient storage for all of the stuff that we've collected over these many years. I'd like it to be on one floor at least as much as possible, because stairs aren't my favorite thing to do, right? Well, that's not enough for the builder to actually go out and build me a house that's acceptable, right? So then we get it, and that's called a business requirement. Then we talk about user requirements or stakeholder requirements, and that's where I tell them I need so many rooms, and and I need a kitchen, I need a great room, and I need an Ethernet port in one of the bedrooms for my computer so that I can give webinars. Right? Those are the user requirements or stakeholder requirements. Now you still don't have enough to really build a house that's going to be acceptable to me. There's not enough detail there. So we take those and we convert those into what we call part of the solution requirements, or in this case, functional requirements. So here, when we talk about functional requirements, we take those user requirements, right, the 3 bedrooms and the kitchen and the great room and the laundry room, and we start to actually define those in terms that will allow the builder to do that for me. So we say, the master bedroom's got to be, 18 by 14. There should be an ensuite. We want a walk-in closet that measures whatever it measures, and we would provide those measurements. We want a great room and we would provide the measurements for the great room and the measurements for the kitchen. And oh, by the way, I'd like to have an island in the kitchen, and the island should be 2 feet by 4 feet, and it should be up at 30 inches high. And I'd like granite countertops, right? And so we do all of this stuff. Now, the contractor's got enough information that he can actually build a house for me that'll be acceptable to me. Now, those are functional requirements. That's all the stuff that I deal with, all the interaction that I have with the house, okay? Then there are, as some of you may know, what we call non-functional requirements. Now, the non-functional requirements are the things, that's the building code, it's, the electrical code, it's having, 2x4 studs on 16-inch centers, whatever that means. All that stuff, it's the gauging of the cable, right? What do I know? I don't need to know that as long as it meets code, right? And if the house doesn't collapse on me, those are non-functional requirements. I don't interact with that part of the house, okay? So those would be non-functional requirements. And then they talk about transition requirements, which is how do we cut over from the old place to the new place? How do we cut over from the old system to the new system? Those are generally one and dones, right? Use it once. Once it's done, we don't need that requirement anymore. So we have all of these requirements that we have to do in order to solve a problem, right? Whether it's an IT problem, whether it's a move into a new home, there's business analysis going on. All right? Now, the role of the BA, the responsibilities of the BA, is to be the liaison between the different stakeholders and stakeholder groups to, there's a long list, elicit, analyze, communicate, and validate requirements for changes to business processes, policies, and information systems. Now, the business processes, policies, and information systems has to do with where the originators of the IIBA, the International Institute of Business Analysis, came from. They were a bunch of project management professionals from the IT world that said, we need to do a better job of requirements. And so there's this very strong IT bent to their initial definition of what business analysis is about and what the best practices are, right? As I mentioned earlier, it doesn't have to be just IT, but we elicit, we collect and gather from the various stakeholders what their requirements are. We analyze them, we make sense of them, we model them, we come up with a system or blueprints, depending on what kind of project we're talking about, that will meet that need. We communicate about those requirements. We get people on board. We keep them on board. We keep them engaged. And we validate the requirements, right? We actually go in and we say, okay, here's what you wanted. Here's what we've built. Does this meet your need? That's that validation. Making sure that we've done what they said they wanted. Okay? Our job is the liaison. We're the ones that have got to make sense of the various requirements from the different users or stakeholders that we have to make sure that they're harmonized, that they make sense, that everything fits together. Right? Let me give you an example. You may have heard the story of the three blind men describing an elephant. I know, I haven't lost my mind. This is what the BAs do. We're like the three blind guys describing an elephant. As we start looking at a project, we really don't know very much about what's going on. And these three blind guys describing the elephant have an elephant put in front of them, and somebody says, okay, describe this elephant to me. So the first guy goes up to the elephant and he grabs him by the trunk. And he turns back to his buddies and he says, hey, an elephant's like a fire hose. That's interesting. So another one goes up to the elephant. He happens to end up at the other end of the elephant and grabs the tail, and he says, no, no, no. An elephant's not at all like a fire hose. An elephant's really more like a rope. The third blind man says, all right, let me solve this once and for all. And he walks up to the elephant and bumps into a leg, wraps his arms around the leg, and says, you guys are nuts. An elephant is really like a tree trunk. Now, nobody really succeeded in describing the elephant, right? They were all a little bit right, but they were all very much wrong, right? Because all they had was that little bit of the elephant. They had their piece of the elephant, if you would. We need more blind men around this thing to try really get the full description, right? There's a mouth, there are a couple of tusks, there are those big flappy ears, right? 3 more tree trunks and a big old torso. Okay? Now, it's not an awful lot different than what we do as BAs, right, as we approach a problem. We don't know very much about a problem. Somebody comes up to us and says, oh, Kathy, I need you to build me a system. Oh, that's good. What do you want it to do? And you, well, stuff. All right? So there I am. I've just been made the blind guy in front of a system that's supposed to do stuff. So now we have to figure out what kind of stuff, how it's supposed to work, and all of that. Okay. So now I have to talk to the various players and stakeholders and make sense of all that. We need to see how this fire hose and the rope and the tree trunk are all connected, right? So it really does come out looking like an elephant when we're done. Okay? Does anybody have any questions?
We don't have any questions yet, Lou.
Okay, good. So we're done with the elephant. Now from now on, all I have to say is we're describing the elephant. Everybody gets it. All right. Now, one of the things that, or a couple of the roles that happen in a project or exist in a project are the role of the BA, the business analyst, and the role of the project manager. And they work very closely together. Often in small projects, either the BA or the PM will end up doing both of those roles. They're distinct. although they are similar and they work closely together. The project manager is in charge of making sure that we're on scope, on schedule, and on budget, that we're delivering everything that we said we were going to deliver, that we're on schedule and on budget, okay? He is, or she, is responsible for the process side of things, making sure that we go through the process of completing the work. Whereas the business analyst is responsible for describing the product, making sure that it's well defined, making sure that we understand exactly what it is that we're supposed to be doing, okay? And then keeping us on track there. So we do work very closely with the project management team, and at times, that's a shared responsibility between the project manager and the business analyst. Okay? Now, there are a whole bunch of competencies here. They're all listed. I'm not going to insult you by reading them. But I would ask you a question. If, as you look at this list of the competencies of a good business analyst, there's one sort of common thread, I think, that ties all of these together. And we could summarize it in one word. Does anybody have a suggestion as to what that word might be?
People, you can type into chat or the questions with your responses.
Yeah, I'm sorry, this wasn't a polling question. This was just I'm just making sure people are awake. Is anybody thinking communication? Right? Whether we're analyzing and understanding the business problem, we're communicating. Identifying and documenting requirements, obviously, we have to communicate. Communicating effectively, okay, fine. Managing client relationships, we are all about communication, right? Facilitating discussions, negotiating and building consensus, modeling data, planning and managing activities, facilitating business strategy, right? Understanding and managing organizational change, right? So if you were thinking about the skill set that you'd like to see in a good BA, I really think we want to be thinking about somebody who can communicate effectively to a broad audience, okay? Senior managers, users, managers, developers. We have to be able to communicate with all of these people to blend this whole requirements mess together, okay? Good. Business analysis. Why the big fuss? What's the benefit? Well, ultimately, what we end up doing is we help the organization reduce waste. We help the organization create solutions, right? Design a solution that's going to meet the needs of the various stakeholders and stakeholder groups. We help the project manager get the project done on time. I want to come back to that in a minute. We improve efficiency, obviously, by reducing waste, by creating effective solutions, by not rebuilding the wheel or reinventing the wheel, and making sure that the requirements that we're documenting are the right requirements, right? Sometimes somebody will say, well, I want it to be like this. Well, if that's the only person and nobody else agrees, then maybe that's not a requirement that we need. Maybe we want to put that off to something else. Maybe we'll just say, that's not happening. We'll make that an exclusion from the project, okay? Now, this idea of getting the project completed on time is really important. Some of you may have actually had someone in your organization say, oh, just get it done. We don't have time to do requirements. We don't have time for business analysis. That just doesn't make any sense to me. I'm here to tell you that's just wrong thinking. And if you're one of those people that is thinking that way, I apologize if I've insulted you, but that's not the best way to get things done, right? Does anybody, you may have had a situation where you've actually had to do rework on something. What they've found, and don't ask me who they are, but I've seen numbers, I've seen a bunch of numbers about how much it costs to do rework and how much more expensive it is to rework something than it is to do it right the first time. And someone suggested to me, and I think it's probably a reasonable number, that rework on average costs 7 times as much as it would cost to do it right the first time. Right? So if you have to do something again, right, we got to think about, okay, what went into finding out that we had to redo this, right? There's some extra time. We have to undo it. We've got to analyze it. We've got to redo it. And then we've got to let people know that we've fixed it, right? And if you go in and take a look at something that you've had to redo or rework, you'll probably be able to get to 7 times pretty quickly. 7 times more than doing that bit of work correctly the first time. So this idea of just get it done, or we don't have time to do project management, we don't have time to do best practice, as one of my early bosses said to me, if you don't have the time to do it right the first time, why do you think you've got enough time to do it again? Right? So we're going to be much better off and much better served if we take the time to do good business analysis and then execute that plan just as it's been written, rather than just sort of rushing in and winging it on the project. Okay? So it's really important that we spend the time doing the planning, doing the analysis before we actually get started. Now, challenges, there are lots of challenges to business analysis. Here are a few that are listed. These come up over and over again. Lack of clarity in the scope of business functions. Some of you may have worked on projects where somebody comes to you and they say, well, as I mentioned earlier, I need you to build me a system. Oh, that's interesting. What's it supposed to do? Stuff, right? Our customers don't even know exactly what they want. They have difficulty stating what their needs are, and yet they want us to build it for them. And they don't have time or the interest to work with us in order to define what that is. Okay? Another major challenge, business requirements aren't well managed, right? So whether that comes from not always using the most recent version of the requirement, not keeping track of how those versions are developed, or if it's a question of scope creep, where somebody comes along and talks to you in the hall and says, Kathy, can you add this to the project? And you just say yes, right? That project is doomed to fail. And by failure, I mean it's going to be late, it's going to be over budget, we're not going to meet all the requirements. There's conflict between business groups. One group says it ought to be white, another group says it has to be black, right? Often, business analysts will let that stand. And we'll try to produce something that's both black and white, right? And we end up not meeting the needs of either of those stakeholder groups, okay? So whether we like it or not, this idea of being the conflict resolver is part of our responsibility, right? We've got to get these two groups together, the folks that want it white and the folks that want it black. And we got to say, we can't make it both ways. What's it going to be, right? Now, this idea, the next one of not bringing the business analyst into the project early enough is like, some of you may have seen the movie Unstoppable. Remember the movie about the train Denzel Washington was supposed to stop this getaway train. The engineer had gotten off of it, right? That accident was bound to happen, right? I think he actually ended up saving it, but there was, collateral damage in the interim. But basically what happens is, the project gets started without a BA, and then as somebody sees that there's a hairpin turn coming up ahead and there's a problem coming, that's when they call the business analyst and they say, can you keep this train from falling off the tracks? And the answer at that point is probably no. It's a little bit late. Can you make sure that we get this done on time? No, because now there's rework that needs to be done. We have to undo, we have to redo, right? So we have both the cost and the time aspect of the rework that has to happen, right? I would propose to you that the business analyst needs to be brought in probably as early as project selection, right? Even before we actually define what it is that we're doing, right? The business analyst has got to be involved that early, right? In order to be able to give his best or her best input to the project team, okay? And then finally, the fact that we don't have a consistent approach to business analysis, and to a large extent, that's due to the fact that up until recently, up until the IIBA actually brought this together and codified this body of knowledge of best practices, there really hasn't been a collection of best practices to which we could refer to say, here's the best way to go about doing this. And so we didn't do it consistently every time. Each time we had a new project to do, we would take maybe a slightly different approach to how we analyze this. Now at this point, I think Kathy's got a question for you in a poll.
So everybody, please take a look at your screen. We've got about 28 people, not 28 people, 28%, now 50%. That was quick voting in this poll. I'll leave it open for another 10 seconds. So we have 80% voted. That last 20% of you, you got a couple seconds left. Get your answers in. All right, so we're going to close the poll, and I'll share the results with you. Luke, can you see these?
Yeah, I see the results. Wow. Okay. 34, 37, tied, well, almost tied. It's a statistical tie. Actually, it is a tie. 42%. Well, actually, the answer according to the PMI publication called Pulse of the Profession says 37% caused by, of the project failures are caused by inaccurate requirements. Understand what that's saying. What that means is we don't really understand what it is that we're doing, but we're busy doing it, okay? So we're looking busy, right? So if the boss comes, I'm working on something, but I'm not sure exactly what it is that we're supposed to be doing, right? That's a major, major contributor to project failure, okay?
I do have 3 questions that have just come in the last couple of minutes right before the poll.
Thanks, Kathy.
Do you want to take those right now?
Yes, please.
Number 1 is, what are your thoughts on a mindset that the quote-unquote development team, like developers and QA, on what they should be doing, that they should be doing the analysis? This appears to be a symptom of companies switching to an agile methodology.
Okay. All right. In general, and if there are any developers out there that are doing business analysis work, I apologize. It's nothing against you. As I mentioned, I think the key qualification, the key skill set for business analysts is communication. And we have to be able to communicate effectively with non-technical people as well as the technical folks. So sometimes it can be difficult if the developers are doing the BA work. Okay? Now, as we start to, I mean, what management tends to do is to say, well, you know, you guys are the technicians, you guys are going to be building this, you ought to gather the requirements. Not necessarily so, right? Getting somebody who understands the business might actually be a better way to do it. Now, as we start moving into an agile project methodology, I think there's still room for an analyst, but the whole process of taking an agile approach requires bringing a team of people together, which is cross-functional. So we get developers, we get users, we get testers, we get maybe an analyst. All of those people are together working closely on what it is that we're supposed to be doing. Now, there's not quite so much need for communication and effectively document. What, did I go the wrong way? What happened? Sorry.
Let me hide this poll for you. There you go.
There we go. All right. So the communication is different, right? Because everybody's in the same room, right? This cross-functional team is meeting together on a daily basis. They can iron out the difficulties and the uncertainties or the vagaries that are in those requirements, right? The users are actually writing up user stories that say as a whatever it is, right? As a bank teller, I need to be able to call up all the accounts of my customers at the same time so that I can assist my clients. Okay? It's really vague at this point, but working together with the developers and the testers and the users and the analysts will figure out what that is, and then in a very short period of time, the developers will prepare this, and in a sprint of 1 to 4 weeks, they'll actually start delivering this kind of functionality, and then we'll start working on the next requirement. So it's a slightly different methodology. The role of the business analyst is a little bit different, but there still is a role for them. Okay?
Okay,
Kathy?
and then a next question, which is much more general. Mary is saying, as you are speaking, she says, I'm thinking and I'm kind of confused because I clearly do not see the difference between a BA and a PM. Why do we need both?
Mary, on a small project, you could probably get away with just having one. Okay? There are some different tools that we use as project managers or as business analysts. On a larger project, I think the particular skill of a BA in gathering, analyzing, modeling the requirements is particularly important, and there's probably enough work to do to allow a person, even on a part-time basis, to do the business analysis stuff, while the project manager is worried about making sure that we actually accomplish the work of the project. So while they are similar, they're a little bit different. The skill set is very similar. So, you know, there's a part of me that says that those two roles can be combined. But we just have to know which hat we're wearing. They are two slightly different hats. And Kathy, did you
Very good,
have
thank you. That really is. Yeah, the other question was about your handouts, and so I can mention that Lou did include 4 handouts or several handouts, and you can access those and download those during the presentation. We will not be emailing those handouts to you afterwards, so if you want them, you need to download them while you're in the presentation.
Thank you, Kathy. I was going to just mention those. I saw handouts down there and realized I hadn't mentioned them. All right, let's move on. Okay, so often, if we're just getting started, if our organization doesn't have a good, project management and BA methodology in place, what happens to our organization is we end up with situations like this, where, it's tough to say no to projects. There's no strategic focus. Projects are sold based on emotion, right? We don't have a strong review process because we don't have anything to review against. We overemphasize return on investment, and we don't have strategy, a clear strategy or a strategy against which we can make those project selections. So we need to have some sort of strategy, right? When we have that situation, the organization ends up with too many projects. We can't kill them because we don't have any justification to kill them, because there hasn't been anything set up against which we can measure them and say, well, this project isn't doing it. Okay? Quality of execution suffers because we're spread all over the map. We're spread way, way too thin, right? We underestimate cost and risks, right? And projects aren't aligned to strategy. Maybe the organization doesn't have a really clear strategy to begin with, right? All of this results in budget overruns, project delays, business needs not being met. We're not going to receive the benefit that we ought to, right? Projects become increasingly complex. Resources aren't used to the optimal level. There's an awful lot of finger pointing going on, and the confidence in the IT department just falls through the floor. I've seen it happen. It's not a pretty sight, but certainly if we can develop a strategic plan against which we can make decisions and make selections, we can overcome some of these things, right? So these are symptoms of not having a good strategic plan, not having good governance in our projects. All right? Now, Kathy, there's another polling question, the second one. Can we ask that one right about now?
Yep, here you go, everyone. Please place your votes on what percentage of organizations have the necessary resources in place to address requirement activities. And the votes are coming in, Lou. We have 37% have voted, 41, 48.
Good.
Keep them coming, folks. 56% have voted, 63. 70% have voted. Keep this poll open for another 10 seconds. %85 have voted, and we're going to close it at 85% voted.
Okay.
And here are your results.
Yeah, good, good. Yeah, about half, 49% have the resources that are required in order to get the project done, to address requirements activities, right? The rest of them are floundering a bit, and it needs to be developed. Good, thanks, Kathy.
You're welcome.
Whoops, what happened?
Back to you.
Oh, there we go. Okay. So when the business analyst is doing her job or his job, right, what we contribute is an understanding of the project management and business analysis processes to make sure that we've defined what it is that we're supposed to be doing, we understand all the work that goes into that, and we can deliver the product that's actually needed by the stakeholders in order to meet their expectations. Okay. Now, they talk about 4 R's, questions that we're continually having to be asking, right? Are we doing the right things? This is the strategic question, right? This is, why are we making this change in the organization? Is this something that we really need, right? Are we getting the most benefit from this? Is it affordable? Are we willing to take the risk that's associated with this project? Then we talk about the architectural question, right? So we talk about the strategy, we make sure that our project aligns with the strategy. Now we have to talk about the architectural side of things. Are we doing them the right way? Is this the best fit for our organization? Does it align with our architecture, right? Is it consistent with our principles? Okay, so if we've decided that we're going to go with commercial off-the-shelf software, and now we have an application that says, we're going to develop this one in-house. You know, maybe we want to go about that a slightly different way. Then we ask, are we getting them done well? Now we talk about delivery. Now we're talking about, you know, have we defined it well? Are we finishing it well? Are we selling it well? Right? Are we doing the necessary training? Do we have all the skills and the resources that we need in order to accomplish this? And then finally, the last R is about the value. And this is one where I'm afraid a lot of companies fall down. This is one where we actually don't measure the benefit clearly. Right? We don't actually take time after we've rolled out the product to see whether or not we actually did accomplish what we wanted to do. Did we actually give the company the benefit that they had expected that we were going to deliver? Right? And this is all about accountability. I think it's a question that we need to ask. Now, a lot of this falls to us because in order to be able to answer that question, we need to be able to find out from our stakeholders how it is that they want to measure that. As we're gathering the requirements, each requirement has got to have a way to test it and measure it to see if it's been accomplished. Okay? Kathy, I think you've got our final poll before we go to the next slide.
I do, Lou. Thanks. Everybody, so we do have a final poll here. Please put in your votes. What percentage of overall project time is spent eliciting, elaborating, and communicating project requirements?
Now, this is not your project in general, but in specific, this is overall.
Awesome. People are voting faster this time. We have 42% in, 65%, 77. Maybe we'll make it to 100 this time. Participation. 85% have voted now. We'll give it 10 more seconds. Looks like we're going to have 90% of the vote.
That's pretty good.
90% vote. Here we go. Close the poll. I will share. Here you go.
Okay, I have a feeling that some people may have answered from their own experience. Okay, the actual answer is 50%. 50% of our time is spent elaborating and communicating about project requirements. Good. Thank you, Kathy.
You're welcome.
Okay, now project selection. This is one that always gets me, and I want you to think you don't have to answer us. When we select the projects, we've got to consider what the business wants, what are they trying to get out of it, are we meeting the priorities of the business, right, their portfolio, right, and are we managing it properly? Are we implementing it properly? Now, this is one of those places where I think that understanding the organization's strategic plan, strategic objectives, is absolutely crucial. Okay, so if your organization has a strategic plan, I want you to get a copy of it. It shouldn't be a secret. Okay, and we need to choose which projects we're going to do according to how much they support that strategic alignment. How well do they align with that strategic plan? Do they move us in the direction that we want to go in over the next 5 to 10 years? Right? So if we have 50 projects from which to choose, we want to take those that are going to move us in that direction the farthest at the lowest price. Okay? So make sure that you have your strategic plan in hand. Make sure that when you're looking at your project, you're tying it into the strategic plan, right? So that if somebody, if somebody comes to you and says, Mary, we're cutting $100,000 from your project, you can say, wait, hang on. Our project supports the strategic plan. Why are you taking money away from this? Did our strategic plan change? Right? So make sure that you have that. Make sure that your project aligns with that strategy, both in terms of the functionality that it's giving to the users, but as well, does it meet the business needs, our priorities, and are we implementing it well? Good. So, what we do, why business analysis is so important? We understand the business need. We understand probably better than anybody else why we're doing this. What are we hoping to achieve? We're making sure that we're managing the requirements throughout the life cycle of the project, right? So from the very sketchy beginning all the way through to the end of the project and the accountability of saying, gee, did we achieve what we hoped to? This is what we're doing. We're communicating with stakeholders, making sure that everybody's on board and that everybody stays on board, that we've identified exactly what they want and that we're actually accomplishing that. In gathering the requirements, we're gathering the measurement criteria or the success criteria for the project. Whether that's this functionality has to be done this quickly, right? Or whether it is we want to be able to handle 20% more transactions using the same staff as what we're doing now. Different criteria, different kinds of requirements, but we need to know what those criteria are. And then finally, we have to evaluate at the end to make sure that the solution that we've delivered adds the value that we hoped to deliver, that was expected of us when we started out. Okay? Kathy, I'm going to hand this back to you.
Awesome. Lou, thank you so much. Yeah, I do have two questions, but now is the time if you have any questions that you'd like Lou to answer, to add, we'll take those and I will ask him. But before, just to give people some time, I did want to tell you guys about some promotions that we have going and about a couple of classes. First of all, we do have and are offering you, the attendees, not just anybody who registered, it's only for you people who have attended this webinar. You get 20% off of the classes that are on the next slide. And Lou is forwarding these slides for me. I want you also to know that you also would be able to enjoy our buy two, get one free discount. So first of all, you get 20% off of the classes, plus if you buy two of these classes, which are all going to be between now and the end of the year, you would get a third class of equal or less value free, and you could sit that class all the way up through the end of March, whatever class that might be that you would choose. So I just want you to know that. What we need you to do if you are interested in any of these classes is to call us. Rather than just going to the website and putting it in, it's probably easier for you to just give us a call. You don't actually have to pay right now. We want you to call and say, I want to secure a seat in these classes. We know that we're asking you to do it in a short period of time. So you would call and say, I want to secure a seat, and we'd work out the payment later. But if you give us that call before the end of the week, that would be awesome. You will be receiving, as I mentioned, by tomorrow, we're going to work on it this afternoon, a follow-up email. It'll have these slides in it. It'll have these classes that we just talked about, the 20% off. It'll explain about the promotion as well. So I did mention that we have, also I do want to make a special note that the PMP class that we have scheduled, it's saying in here that it's scheduled for March 7 of 2016. Right now we do have one that is scheduled for November 16th, and that one will be the last one that you can probably take and take the exam before that exam changes. So that's a pretty good, as I understand it, I'm not a PMP and I'm going off of memory, but I think there are 8 other questions or modules, I'm not sure which it is, that will be in the new exam, and so therefore it's a little bit heftier of an exam. So if you take the class here in November and sit the exam before the end of the year, you'll get to sit for the earlier exam. Lou,
Kathy,
you probably know more about that than I do.
yeah, it's modules. They've changed it a
Modules.
little bit. I don't think that the content is going to change significantly. I think it's the weighting of the questions, how many questions there will be from different knowledge areas.
Okay.
It's still going to be 200 questions, a crazy-making exam, but yeah, it is changing a little bit at the end of the year.
Okay, thank you. So just to wrap up, we have these 2 questions that I do have for you, and I have 2 more that have come in since then.
Okay.
So one of the questions is, you mentioned that one of the challenges to doing good business analysis is getting business analysis involved too late. How do you view their role so early? What is their role earlier on?
Well, I think that's a great question. I really like it. I think we need to be at that strategic table that decides, that helps management. I don't think we all have to be there, by the way. Some of us have got to be at that table where we decide which projects we're going to do so that we can understand what the impact is that we want to have on the organization. We can be involved in writing the charter that goes to the project manager that says, here's what we want to accomplish, right? Then being engaged that way, then when we start to work with the project manager on actually developing the detailed requirements, we're up to speed, we know what we're trying to do, we understand how it aligns with the strategy, and we can move forward.
Very good. And another question, any thoughts on how to get the users to divulge all the requirements? They do things so much that they forget to tell us the steps.
Capture their firstborn, and no, I'm kidding. It really is a question of managing that engagement and making sure that they understand we're trying to do this for them, and that we don't have and I'll be perfectly honest with them, I don't have a crystal ball. I don't have a desk accessory that even looks like a crystal ball. I need them to tell me what they need. So it's a question of developing that relationship and going back and you say, is this everything? Is it absolutely everything? Is there anything else? Right? And keeping them involved and engaged as we go through and elicit the requirements. It's tough, particularly with stakeholders that have difficulty describing what their requirements are. They don't know how to write requirements really well, so we really do have to sort of pry it out of them. Let me just add one more thing to that, and that is, I think setting the expectation up front that we need them to be engaged in developing and approving the requirements. Notice the approving, right? I want them to approve it and say, yes, that's what I want, so that they understand the weightiness of that decision. Now, that's not to say that they're not going to change it, they can't submit a change request, but I need them to say, yeah, that's what I had in mind. Okay.
Great, thank you. And then the last question is actually about one of our classes that we have up on the screen. Jen is asking that PMI Professional and BA class, is that a certification prep class, and do we take an exam at the end? And the answer is yes, it is a certification prep class, and yes, you do. So that's the newest certification that's been developed by the PMI. And this will be the first class that we have, and I'm probably one of the very first in the country that's actually being conducted. And we're lucky enough to have a colleague of Lou's, Laura Gray, and she did conduct a webinar with us, I think 2 weeks ago, talking about this. She actually helped to write the PBA exam questions, I believe. Am I correct, Lou?
And actually, she worked on describing that body of knowledge for PMI.
Yes.
She actually worked for IIBA for a while on their body of knowledge and PMI, and now worked on this exam as well. So if you can take this class from Laura, I would highly recommend that.
Right. And I don't see any other questions coming in, Lou.
Okay.
I want to say thank you. You've done as always, you've answered all the questions. You had a really very informative webinar, and I appreciate you joining us very much.
Thank you, Kathy, and thank you everybody for being here. I hope to see you in a class someday.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.